My sense of spirituality is not only one of the most important aspects of my life, but rather it's the central axis from which all other things extend outwards like branches off of a growing tree. Though I bear great resistance in describing myself as spiritual because I feel that in the West, we don't all share the same conventional notion. Spirituality has lain within its conception far too much ungrounded woo-woo or abstract mysticism that's divorced from the common person's apprehension. Informed by Eknath Eswaran's introduction and translation of the Bhagavad Gita, I want to offer the historically relevant scientific framework that makes understanding the essential root of spiritual wisdom accessible to those secularly minded. Additionally, I want to explore two ideas fundamental to Hindu religious thought, Atman and Brahman, that were born of this pre-scientific investigation of the self, and lastly, what these realizations mean in our everyday life. India is without a doubt one of the world's epicenters for spiritual seekers from all walks of life. Meditators and yogis from all over the world flock to India in search for spiritual teachers or gurus to help aid them on their path towards enlightenment. The practices of yoga and meditation originated in India, and their origin dates back to ancient times. There's record of an ancient Indus Valley civilization with an image of Shiva, one of Hinduism's major deities, as Lord of Yoga that dates back to 3000 BC. That means that the practices of yoga and meditation have been developing in this part of the world for over 5,000 years. Though what's interesting to note about this ancient Indus Valley civilization is their remarkable technological competency. They had advanced metalwork, industry with standardized methods of production, trade with cultures as far away as Mesopotamia, and well-planned cities with water supplies and public sanitation systems unequaled until the Romans. The advanced technological competency of these ancient people implies a profound analytic and technological capacity for engaging with and understanding the natural world around them. Now, what's fascinating is if we extend this perception to the rishis, the seers of the time, we can view these seers not as mystical vessels uniquely granted visions of God, but as pre-scientific investigators inquiring into the nature of self. This group of individuals was applying the same analysis to the data of the mind in order to acquire knowledge not of the material world, but knowledge of the self. The knowledge of who, what, and how we are as human beings. Thus, it was through this pre-scientific investigation into the nature of human being that these rishis of ancient India came upon the great mystical discoveries that were expressed in the Rig Vedas, the Upanishads, the Mahabharata, and lay at the foundation of the great religious and wisdom traditions of the land. As such, these mystical declarations are not speculative philosophy or alien metaphysics, but rather invariable truth that may be realized by any human being who so dares to probe into the deepest layers of their own being. It's not a matter of belief or faith, but a matter of investigation. Simply walking the path and doing the work and seeing for yourself what you find at the bedrock of your own consciousness. Though we don't all need to walk the path to learn from what they put forward as truth, just like we don't all need to become physicists to accept and trust in the work of Einstein or Newton. So, what are some of the discovered treasures that have been bestowed upon us by these seers that we can use to enrich our lives right here and right now? These rishis probed with discerning awareness into the nature of the mind. They withdrew their awareness from the outside world into their senses. Furthermore, they withdrew their awareness from the senses, sight, touch, taste, smell, into the landscape of the mind. They observed different nested layers of function: sense, emotion, will, intellect, ego. They noticed how thoughts fall forward from one onto the next, how moods come and go like the hot and cold of summer and winter, how opinions and beliefs evolve with time. They observed how the same person can appear to have two entirely different personalities based on circumstance and context. A present experience will impress itself onto the mind, and the mind brings up a memory we had long forgotten, imbuing the experienced moment with a ghostly nostalgia. They realize that the nature of the mind is change, and the mind isn't solid like the objects of the world around us, but rather the mind is more like a field of forces that dissolves like a river of impressions. Though, they asked, if the nature of the mind is change, then where is the I that feels constant amidst all of this turning over? They continued penetrating into deeper, more subtle layers of mind. They focused their awareness so intensely that eventually, in the supreme climax of meditation, where consciousness was so acutely focused so as to be conscious of only consciousness itself, the ego fell away, and they found a core of consciousness that was beyond all time and change. They call this Atman, the core of consciousness, the self. In this manner of inner investigation, the rishis hit a fundamental bedrock that was outside of time and outside of change. In this realm of experience, all of the mental objects that emerge, dissolve, and re-emerge with new form simply all melted into one unitive, undifferentiated, infinite field of awareness. They found an indivisible, changeless reality where all of the transient data of the world cohere. They called this reality Brahman, the Godhead, the divine ground of existence. The two concepts are essentially the same, with Atman being an incarnated localization of Brahman, specific versus general, individual versus universal, God immanent versus God eternal. The unit of experience makes all sense of separateness disappear and makes life into a seamless whole. Though, as biological organisms, we cannot navigate through the physical world to fulfill our needs and desires in such a state of consciousness. The faculty of discrimination is a necessary condition for us as organisms to operate in the world. We need to delineate this from that so we know on what to step and where to grab. We need to differentiate between the fruit of a plant and its flower so we know what to eat. The mind takes in as input the continuous field of undifferentiated matter, and as a function of perception divides the world into separate classes of objects. From within the mind's eye, its percepts are separate, diverse, and transient. From the mind's point of view, separateness is real. The great mistake, however, is in conflating the separate nature of the mind's perception of the world with the actual world itself as it exists outside of the realm of human perception. This is an extremely subtle, though an incredibly crucial distinction. The word yoga, coming from the root word yuj, meaning to yoke or bind together, are the disciplines for achieving this state of unity. It is the work of the yogi through certain paths to continually steep himself within the state of oneness with the universe. As the yogi walks through the world, he sees the infinite underlying the finite, the eternal beneath the ephemeral, the absolute behind the transient. The yogi works on extending his boundary of self to contain not only what exists within his skin, but pushing the boundary outward so as to contain everything in existence. The yogi sees the tree which gives his lungs oxygen to breathe as much a part of himself as he does his respiratory system. Cutting down a tree is cutting down his own lungs. We are everything, and everything is within us. Though our physical body will die, we will not die. And this is the supreme goal of human existence, the essential immortality, which is our most profound birthright and the highest realization that life can offer. To such a person, the Gita says, death is no more traumatic than taking off an old coat. Such a person cannot be threatened by life or shaken by the heaviest burden of sorrow. All that's left to do then is to love, to serve, and to remember.